There is someone you can't get out of your head. They consume your thoughts from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep. You check your phone, hoping for a message that never comes. You replay conversations over and over, analyzing every word, every pause, every silence. You scroll through their social media like an addict searching for their next hit. You tell yourself you're over them, but your mind betrays you every single time. You're not weak. You're not pathetic. You're experiencing one of the most powerful psychological phenomena known to human beings, obsessive attachment. And the reason you can't just move on isn't because you lack willpower. It's because your brain has been hijacked by a complex network of neurochemical reactions, evolutionary survival mechanisms, and deeply ingrained behavioral patterns that were designed to keep you bonded to another person. But here's what nobody tells you. Letting go isn't about forgetting someone. It's not about pretending they never mattered. It's about rewiring your brain, reclaiming your mental real estate, and rebuilding your identity as a complete person who doesn't need anyone else to feel whole. By the end of this guide, you will understand the exact psychological mechanisms that keep you trapped in obsessive thinking. You will have a step-by-step system for breaking the cycle of rumination and emotional dependency. You will learn how to rewire your brain for emotional freedom and build an unshakable sense of self that no one can take away from you. This isn't about getting over someone in a few days. This is about a complete mental and emotional transformation that will change how you approach relationships for the rest of your life. If you're ready to take back control of your mind and your life, let's begin. Chapter 1. The brutal truth about why you can't let go. The reason you can't stop thinking about them has nothing to do with love. I know that hurts to hear, but it's the truth you need to face if you ever want to be free. What you're experiencing isn't romantic devotion or deep connection. It's psychological addiction. Your brain doesn't know the difference between losing someone you love and losing access to a drug. When you become emotionally attached to another person, your brain releases a cocktail of neurotransmitters including dopamine, norepinephrine, and oxytocin. These chemicals create feelings of euphoria, obsession, and deep bonding. When that person is suddenly unavailable, your brain goes into withdrawal mode, desperately seeking its next fix. Think about it. When you were with them, how did you feel? Alive, electric, like you could conquer the world. When they gave you attention, you felt like you were flying. When they withdrew, you crashed harder than you ever thought possible. That's not love. That's addiction. You became addicted to the neurochemical high they provided, and now you're going through withdrawal. But here's where it gets worse. Your addiction isn't just chemical, it's also behavioral. Every time you think about them, every time you check their social media, every time you replay a memory, you're reinforcing the neural pathways that keep you trapped. Your brain creates stronger and stronger connections to thoughts about this person, making it literally impossible to stop thinking about them through willpower alone. The evolutionary psychology behind this is simple but brutal. Thousands of years ago, if you lost your partner, you could die. You needed them for protection, resources, and survival. So, your brain developed mechanisms to keep you desperately seeking reconnection with lost partners. The problem is your ancient brain doesn't know you live in 2025. It thinks losing this person is a life or death situation. So, it floods your system with stress hormones and obsessive thoughts designed to get you to fight for them back. Add to this the modern phenomenon of intermittent reinforcement. If this person gave you attention sporadically, unpredictably, your brain became even more addicted. Gambling addicts don't get hooked on winning every time. They get hooked on the unpredictability of winning. Your brain learned that sometimes this person would give you the neurochemical hit you craved and sometimes they wouldn't. This created the strongest form of psychological conditioning possible. The fantasy bond is another layer of the trap. You didn't just become attached to who this person actually was. You became attached to who you imagined they could be, to the potential you saw in them, to the version of them that existed only in your mind. You're not just grieving a real person. You're grieving a fantasy. And fantasies are much harder to let go of because they can't disappoint you with reality. Finally, there's the trauma bond. If this relationship involved emotional highs and lows, push and pull dynamics, moments of intense connection followed by distance or rejection, your brain may have formed what psychologists call a trauma bond. These bonds are actually stronger than healthy attachments because they trigger your nervous system's survival responses. Your brain becomes convinced that this chaotic, unpredictable person is essential for your survival. Understanding these mechanisms is crucial because it means your inability to let go isn't a personal failing. It's a normal response to abnormal psychological conditioning. But now that you know what you're dealing with, you can start the process of breaking free. Chapter 2: The Obsessive Mind. How your brain gets hijacked. Your brain has been turned against you. Every thought, every memory, every desperate hope that maybe things could work out is not random. It's the result of specific neural networks that have been strengthened through repetition and emotional intensity. To break free, you need to understand exactly how your mind became your prison. The default mode network is the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a specific task. It's responsible for mind wandering, self-reflection, and rumination. In a healthy brain, the default mode network helps you process experiences and plan for the future. In an obsessively attached brain, it becomes a torture device that replays the same thoughts about one person over and over again. Every time you think about this person, you strengthen what neuroscientists call a neural pathway. Think of it like walking through a forest. The first time you walk through, you barely leave a trace. But if you walk the same path every day for months, you create a deep, well-worn trail. Your thoughts about this person have created a superhighway in your brain. Your mind automatically defaults to this path because it's the strongest, most developed route. The anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain responsible for monitoring conflicts and errors, becomes hyperactive when you're separated from someone you're attached to. It literally treats the absence of this person as an error that needs to be corrected. This is why you feel like something is fundamentally wrong when they're not in your life. Your brain is screaming that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with seeking and craving, floods your system every time you think about them. But here's the cruel irony. Dopamine isn't actually released when you get what you want. It's released when you anticipate getting what you want. So, every time you imagine them texting you back, every time you fantasize about reconciliation, every time you hope they'll come back, you're getting a small hit of dopamine that reinforces your obsessive thinking. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, perceives their absence as a threat. It triggers fight-or-flight responses that flood your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This is why thinking about them makes you feel physically sick, why your heart races, why you can't sleep. Your body is in a constant state of emergency, preparing to either fight for this person or flee from the pain of losing them. Working memory, your brain's ability to hold and manipulate information in conscious awareness, becomes compromised. This is why you can't focus on anything else. Why you forget simple tasks. Why your performance at work or school suffers. Your working memory is being occupied by thoughts of this person, leaving no room for anything else. The prefrontal cortex responsible for rational thinking and emotional regulation becomes weakened through chronic stress and emotional overwhelm. This is why you can't just think your way out of the obsession. The part of your brain responsible for logical analysis and self-control has been hijacked by more primitive survival systems. Memory consolidation during sleep becomes disrupted, but not in the way you'd hope. Instead of helping you forget, sleep actually strengthens emotional memories while weakening notional ones. So every night your brain is literally choosing to hold on to memories of this person while letting go of everything else. The rumination cycle becomes self-perpetuating. You think about them, which makes you feel bad, which makes you think about why you feel bad, which leads to more thoughts about them, which creates more bad feelings, and the cycle continues. Each rotation makes the pattern stronger and more automatic. Your brain also develops what psychologists call intrusive thought chains. One small trigger, maybe a song, a smell, or a place that reminds you of them can launch an entire sequence of thoughts, memories, and emotions that can last for hours. These chains become so automatic that you're not even aware they're starting until you're deep in the spiral. The seeking system in your brain designed to motivate you to search for food, shelter, and mates becomes laser-focused on this one person. This system is incredibly powerful because it's tied to survival. It doesn't care about your happiness or your logic. It only cares about getting you to pursue what it has identified as essential for your survival. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward freedom. Your obsessive thoughts aren't a sign of deep love or spiritual connection. They're the result of specific identifiable brain processes that can be interrupted and rewired. The key is knowing exactly how to do it. Chapter 3. The Attachment Trap. Why some people become impossible to forget. Not everyone who leaves your life creates this level of obsessive attachment. There's a specific type of person and a specific type of dynamic that creates the psychological trap you're stuck in. Understanding this isn't about blame. It's about recognition so you can avoid this pattern in the future and understand why your current situation feels so impossible to escape. The unavailable person triggers your attachment system more intensely than someone who is consistently available. Your brain is wired to work harder for uncertain rewards. When someone is unpredictable with their attention, affection, and availability, your brain interprets this as a challenge that must be conquered. The uncertainty activates your seeking system and makes you more obsessed, not less. Intermittent reinforcement is the most powerful form of psychological conditioning. It's the same principle that makes gambling addictive. If this person gave you intense attention and connection sometimes, but was distant or unavailable other times, your brain learned to crave those moments of connection with an intensity that consistent love could never create. The hot and cold dynamic creates what psychologists call an anxious attachment activation. When someone is warm and close, your attachment system relaxes. When they become cold or distant, your attachment system goes into overdrive, flooding your brain with stress hormones and obsessive thoughts designed to restore closeness. If this person was consistently hot and cold, your brain learned to be in a constant state of attachment anxiety. Emotional highs and lows create stronger memories than steady, consistent experiences. The human brain is designed to pay attention to dramatic changes in emotional state because they might signal danger or opportunity. If your relationship was full of intense highs and devastating lows, these experiences are burned into your memory with much greater intensity than a stable, loving relationship would be. The idealization trap occurs when someone shows you just enough of their potential to make you believe you've seen their true self, but not enough consistency to prove it's real. You fell in love not with who they actually were, but with who you glimpsed they could be in their best moments. This creates an addiction to potential rather than reality. Future faking is a pattern where someone talks about future plans, dreams, and commitments they have no intention of following through on. If this person painted pictures of a future together, made promises about changes they would make, or talked about the relationship you could have if only certain conditions were met, your brain became attached to a future that was never real. The trauma bonding effect occurs when someone alternates between being a source of comfort and a source of stress. Your brain becomes confused about whether this person is safe or dangerous. So, it creates an incredibly strong bond as a survival mechanism. If you found yourself making excuses for their behavior, feeling like you needed to save them or believing that your love could change them, you may have formed a trauma bond. Breadcrumbing behavior, where someone gives you just enough attention to keep you hoping, but never enough to feel secure, creates a state of chronic uncertainty that your brain tries to resolve through obsessive thinking. Every small gesture, every brief text, every moment of attention becomes magnified because your brain is desperately looking for signs that this person might become available. The rescue fantasy is particularly powerful. If this person had problems, struggles, or pain that you felt you could help with, your brain may have become attached to the idea of being their savior. This creates a sense of purpose and meaning that feels larger than just romantic attraction. You're not just losing a person. You're losing your identity as someone who could save them. Shared trauma or intense experiences create powerful bonding. If you went through significant challenges together, shared deep vulnerabilities, or experienced intense emotions in each other's presence, your brain may have formed what feels like a soul-deep connection. These bonds feel more significant than regular relationships because they involve shared survival experiences. The scarcity principle makes anything that's hard to get seem more valuable. If this person was selective with their attention, hard to pin down, or had many other options, your brain interpreted their attention as more precious than someone who was consistently available. You became attached not just to them, but to the feeling of being chosen by someone who rarely chooses anyone. Projection and fantasy amplification occur when you project your own capacity for love, loyalty, and depth onto someone who hasn't demonstrated those qualities consistently. You assume they feel as deeply as you do, that they're as affected by the connection as you are, that they're just afraid or confused rather than genuinely uninterested. Understanding these dynamics helps you realize that your intense attachment wasn't necessarily based on a deep mutual connection. It was based on psychological patterns that create artificial intensity and obsessive bonding. This person became impossible to forget, not because they were perfect for you, but because they triggered specific psychological vulnerabilities that made you feel like you needed them to survive. Chapter 4. The Cost of Obsessive Attachment. What this is doing to your life. While you've been lost in thoughts about this person, your actual life has been slipping away. The cost of obsessive attachment isn't just emotional pain. It's the systematic destruction of your potential, your opportunities, your relationships, and your sense of self. If you want to break free, you need to face the full scope of what this obsession is costing you. Your cognitive capacity is being hijacked. The human brain has limited processing power. And when a significant portion is dedicated to thinking about one person, everything else suffers. You're not performing at work the way you used to. You're making mistakes you wouldn't normally make. You're forgetting important tasks, missing opportunities, and operating at a fraction of your intellectual capacity because your mind is elsewhere. Sleep quality deteriorates under the weight of obsessive thinking. You lie awake replaying conversations, imagining scenarios, checking your phone for messages that never come. When you finally do fall asleep, your dreams are filled with them. You wake up exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from the emotional marathon your mind runs every night. Chronic sleep deprivation affects every aspect of your health. From your immune system to your emotional regulation, your social connections are withering. Friends get tired of hearing about the same person over and over again. You cancel plans because you're hoping they might reach out. You turn down social opportunities because you're afraid of missing their call or text. You become emotionally unavailable to the people who actually care about you because you're saving all your emotional energy for someone who isn't even present in your life. Physical health begins to decline under chronic stress. Your immune system weakens from the constant flood of stress hormones. You might develop headaches, stomach problems, muscle tension, or other physical symptoms that are directly related to your emotional state. You stop taking care of yourself properly, skipping meals, avoiding exercise, neglecting basic self-care because you're too preoccupied to focus on your own well-being. Professional opportunities slip by unnoticed. While you're checking your phone every 5 minutes hoping for a message, you're missing emails from potential employers, clients, or collaborators. You're not networking effectively because you can't focus on conversations with other people. You're not pursuing career advancement because you don't have the mental energy to invest in your own growth. Creative and intellectual growth stagnates when your mind is occupied by repetitive thoughts about one person. You don't have space for new ideas, creative projects, or intellectual exploration. Books go unread, skills go undeveloped. Passions are abandoned because you can't concentrate on anything that doesn't relate to your obsession. Decision-making abilities become compromised. You second-guess yourself constantly, not just about the relationship, but about everything. The uncertainty and rumination spill over into every area of your life. You become indecisive about career moves, living situations, financial decisions, and other important choices. Because your brain is stuck in analysis paralysis mode, self-esteem erodes gradually. Every day that passes without contact from them feels like confirmation that you're not valuable enough, not interesting enough, not worthy of love. You begin to internalize rejection as evidence of your own inadequacy rather than recognizing it as incompatibility or their own issues. Future relationships become poisoned by comparison. Even when you do meet someone new, you can't be present with them because you're constantly comparing them to your obsession. You sabotage potential connections because nobody can compete with the idealized version of someone you've created in your mind. Financial resources may be wasted on attempts to get their attention or maintain connections to them. You might find yourself spending money on things you think they'd like, on gifts you never give them, on activities you think might interest them, or on maintaining appearances in case you run into them. Personal goals and dreams are put on hold indefinitely. That trip you wanted to take, that degree you wanted to pursue, that business you wanted to start, that hobby you wanted to develop. Everything waits while you remain emotionally unavailable to your own life. Years can pass this way with your actual dreams gathering dust while you chase a fantasy. Emotional regulation skills deteriorate. You become reactive to small triggers, moody and unpredictable in your other relationships, unable to manage normal stress and challenges. Because all your emotional resources are being drained by your obsession, your identity becomes completely wrapped up in thoughts of this other person. You lose touch with who you were before them, what you wanted before them, what made you happy before them. Your sense of self becomes so dependent on them that you forget you ever existed as a complete person without them. Time, your most precious and non-renewable resource, is being squandered on thoughts that serve no purpose except to keep you trapped in pain. Every hour spent ruminating, analyzing, hoping, and waiting is an hour you'll never get back. An hour that could have been spent building the life you actually want. This isn't sustainable. Your life is happening now, not in some imaginary future where they come back and everything works out perfectly. Every day you spend trapped in obsessive thoughts about someone who isn't thinking about you is a day stolen from your actual existence. The cost is too high and it's time to start calculating what you've lost so you can begin the process of getting your life back. Chapter 5. The Identity Crisis. How losing them feels like losing yourself. The reason letting go feels impossible isn't just because you miss them. It's because somewhere along the way, you stopped existing as an individual and became half of a whole. Your identity became so intertwined with them, with the relationship, with the hope of being with them, that losing them feels like losing yourself. This is the deepest level of the trap, and understanding it is crucial for your freedom. Before you met them, you had a sense of who you were. You had interests, goals, dreams, and a personality that existed independently of anyone else. But when you became attached to them, something shifted. You began to define yourself in relation to them. You were the person they cared about, the one they confided in, the one who understood them better than anyone else. Your value became tied to your role in their life. The merger fantasy is a psychological phenomenon where you begin to see yourself and another person as one unit rather than two separate individuals. You stopped asking "what do I want" and started asking "what do we want?" You stopped thinking about your individual happiness and started thinking about the happiness of the relationship. Your boundaries dissolved and you lost track of where you ended and they began. Codependency created a false sense of purpose. If this person had problems, struggles, or pain, you may have found meaning in being the one who could help them. Your identity became wrapped up in being their supporter, their healer, their safe space. You felt valuable because you were needed. When they left, you didn't just lose them. You lost your entire sense of purpose and meaning. Your internal narrative changed from "I am a complete person" to "I am someone who was incomplete without them." Every story you told yourself about your future included them. Every goal, every dream, every plan was filtered through the lens of this relationship. When they were no longer part of your life, your entire future became unimaginable because you had forgotten how to envision a life that didn't include them. Social identity became tied to being their person. Friends knew you as part of a unit. Family members asked about them. Your social media was filled with evidence of your connection. When the relationship ended, you not only had to grieve the loss of them, but also the loss of your social identity. You went from being the couple to being the single one. And that shift felt like losing a fundamental part of who you were. Your emotional regulation system became dependent on them. Instead of learning to soothe yourself, celebrate your own achievements, or find internal sources of happiness, you became reliant on their presence, their approval, their attention for emotional stability. They became your external emotional regulation system. So when they left, you literally didn't know how to feel okay without them. The future fantasy became more real than the present reality. You spent so much time imagining your life with them, planning hypothetical scenarios, creating detailed mental pictures of your future together, that these fantasies felt more real and compelling than your actual present moment experience. Losing them meant losing not just a person, but an entire imagined future that had become central to your identity. Your personal growth became stunted in service of the relationship. You may have stopped pursuing certain interests because they didn't align with what this person liked. You might have changed your appearance, your opinions, your goals to be more attractive to them. You molded yourself into who you thought they wanted you to be. And in the process, you lost touch with who you actually were. The reflection trap occurred when you began to see yourself only through their eyes. Your self-worth became dependent on their opinion of you. You felt beautiful when they found you attractive, intelligent when they valued your thoughts, worthy when they chose to spend time with you. Without their reflection, you no longer knew how to see yourself clearly. Your decision-making process became completely entangled with considerations of them. You couldn't make choices about your career, your living situation, your friendships, or your lifestyle without considering how it would affect your relationship with them or your chances of being with them. Your autonomy dissolved, and you lost the ability to make decisions based purely on what was best for you. The withdrawal from this identity feels like death because in a psychological sense it is. The version of yourself that existed in relation to them is dying, and your brain is grieving that death as if it were a physical death. This is why the pain feels so overwhelming and why just moving on seems impossible. You're not just losing a person, you're losing an entire version of yourself. Recovery requires rebuilding your individual identity from the ground up. You need to remember who you were before them. Reconnect with your own desires and interests and learn to exist as a complete person rather than half of a couple. This process is painful because it requires letting go not just of them but of the version of yourself that was defined in relation to them. The good news is that underneath all the merger, codependency and lost identity, your authentic self still exists. It's been buried under layers of attachment and false identity, but it hasn't disappeared. The process of letting go isn't just about releasing them. It's about excavating your true self and learning to live as a whole, complete autonomous individual again. Chapter 6. Breaking the Rumination Cycle. How to Stop the Mental Loop. The endless loop of thoughts about this person isn't random. It's a specific psychological pattern called rumination. And it has identifiable triggers, pathways, and exit points. To break free from obsessive thinking, you need to understand exactly how this mental loop operates and then systematically disrupt it at multiple intervention points. Rumination begins with a trigger. This could be a song, a place, a smell, a word, or even just a random moment when your guard is down. The trigger activates what psychologists call an intrusive thought about this person. The key word here is intrusive because these thoughts aren't invited. They appear automatically without your conscious permission because the neural pathway connecting the trigger to thoughts about this person has become superhighway strong. The moment an intrusive thought appears, your brain makes a critical decision that determines whether you'll spiral into hours of rumination or successfully redirect your attention. Most people make the wrong choice without realizing they even have a choice. They engage with the thought. They try to analyze it, understand it, or push it away. This engagement, even negative engagement, feeds the rumination cycle and makes it stronger. The engagement phase is where you lose control. You start asking yourself questions. Why am I thinking about them right now? What does this mean? Maybe they're thinking about me, too. What if I texted them? What would I say? What would they say back? Why did things end the way they did? What if I had done something different? What if they come back? What if they don't? Each question generates more thoughts, more emotions, and deeper engagement with the obsessive content. The emotional amplification occurs as your engagement with the thoughts triggers emotional responses. You feel sad, angry, hopeful, desperate, or nostalgic. These emotions then generate more thoughts because your brain tries to understand and resolve the emotional state. The thoughts create emotions. The emotions create more thoughts, and you're trapped in a self-perpetuating cycle that can last for hours or even days. The resolution-seeking behavior is your brain's attempt to solve the emotional discomfort created by the rumination. You might check their social media, drive by their house, ask mutual friends about them, or send them a text. These behaviors provide temporary relief but actually strengthen the rumination pattern by teaching your brain that obsessive thinking leads to action, which means the thoughts must be important and should continue. Breaking the cycle requires intervention at specific points. The most effective intervention happens in the first 30 seconds after an intrusive thought appears. This is your window of opportunity. Instead of engaging with the thought, analyzing it, or fighting it, you need to acknowledge it and immediately redirect your attention to something else. The acknowledgement technique involves mentally noting the thought without judgment. I'm having a thought about them. This is normal brain activity. I don't need to engage with this right now. This acknowledgement prevents the thought from gaining power through resistance or denial while also preventing engagement that feeds the cycle. Immediate redirection means having a predetermined activity that you can engage in the moment you notice rumination beginning. This needs to be something that requires active attention and preferably involves your body. Physical movement is particularly effective because it shifts your nervous system state and gives your mind something concrete to focus on. The 5-INUT rule creates a boundary around rumination. When you notice obsessive thoughts beginning, you can tell yourself, I can think about this person, but only for 5 minutes. And only if I write down everything I'm thinking. This technique works because most rumination is circular and repetitive. When you force yourself to write it down, you quickly realize you're thinking the same things over and over, which breaks the illusion that the thinking is productive. Thought labeling involves categorizing rumination thoughts instead of engaging with their content. When a thought appears, instead of asking, is this true? Or, what should I do about this? You ask, what type of thought is this? You might label it as fantasy thinking, problem-solving thinking, worry thinking, or nostalgia thinking. This creates psychological distance between you and the problem-solving thinking. Thought content. The neuroplasticity principle means that every time you successfully interrupt rumination and redirect your attention, you weaken the neural pathway that connects triggers to obsessive thoughts. Every time you fail to interrupt and instead engage in hours of rumination, you strengthen that pathway. This means that breaking rumination isn't just about feeling better in the moment. It's about literally rewiring your brain. Environmental design involves removing or minimizing triggers that initiate rumination. This might mean unfollowing them on social media, avoiding certain places, changing your route to work, or removing items from your environment that remind you of them. While you can't eliminate every trigger, you can significantly reduce the frequency of rumination by being strategic about your environment. The replacement thought technique involves having a specific detailed thought sequence prepared that you can immediately substitute when obsessive thoughts arise. This needs to be something engaging and positive that requires mental focus. Some people use detailed visualizations of their goals. Others use complex problem-solving scenarios. Others use gratitude sequences. The key is having it prepared in advance so you don't have to think of what to redirect to in the moment. Time-boxing rumination involves setting aside a specific time period, maybe 15 minutes a day, where you allow yourself to think about this person deliberately. During this time, you can feel sad, angry, hopeful, or whatever emotions arise. But outside of this designated time, when obsessive thoughts arise, you remind yourself, I have a time set aside for this later. Right now, I'm focused on other things. Understanding that rumination is a habit, not a reflection of how much you care about someone, is crucial for breaking free. You haven't been thinking about them constantly because you love them more than anyone has ever loved anyone. You've been thinking about them constantly because your brain has developed a habit loop that associates certain triggers with obsessive thinking. Habits can be broken through consistent practice of new responses. The goal isn't to never think about this person again. The goal is to think about them when you choose to, not when your brain automatically defaults to obsessive rumination. The goal is to transform reactive thinking into conscious thinking, compulsive thinking into optional thinking. Chapter 7. The Detachment Process, Step by Step, Emotional Liberation. Detachment isn't about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about creating psychological space between yourself and your thoughts, emotions, and memories about this person so that they no longer control your inner state. True detachment means you can think about them, feel emotions about them, and even care about them without being destabilized by those thoughts and feelings. The first step in detachment is radical acceptance of the current reality. Not acceptance that things will never change, but acceptance that right now in this moment they are not in your life in the way you want them to be. Most people skip this step because acceptance feels like giving up. But fighting reality is what keeps you trapped. When you accept what is, you stop wasting mental energy on resistance and can redirect that energy toward healing. Radical acceptance means acknowledging these truths without trying to change them. They have chosen not to be with you. They are not thinking about you the way you're thinking about them. The relationship you had is over. The future you imagined with them is not happening. They are living their life without you. These facts are not permanent, but they are true right now. And accepting them stops the mental fight against reality that exhausts you. The second step is emotional inventory, where you identify and separate the different emotions you're experiencing. Most people think they're just sad or heartbroken, but attachment involves complex layers of emotion that need to be addressed individually. You might be experiencing grief for the loss of the relationship, anger at how you were treated, fear about being alone, shame about your attachment, guilt about things you said or did, relief that the uncertainty is over, and hope that things might change. Each emotion requires a different approach. Grief needs to be felt and processed, not pushed away. Anger needs to be expressed safely, not suppressed or directed at them. Fear needs to be challenged with evidence of your ability to survive without them. Shame needs to be met with self-compassion. Guilt needs to be addressed through forgiveness or making amends. Relief needs to be acknowledged without judgment. Hope needs to be redirected toward your own life rather than toward reunion. The third step involves what psychologists call cognitive restructuring, which means identifying and challenging the thoughts that keep you emotionally attached. These thoughts usually fall into specific categories. I'll never find anyone like them. I need them to be happy. They're my soulmate. I can't live without them. Maybe if I just wait long enough. I must have done something wrong. If I was better, they would want me. Challenging these thoughts doesn't mean replacing them with positive affirmations. It means examining them for logical flaws and testing them against evidence. I'll never find anyone like them. assumes that finding someone exactly like them is what you need for happiness, which isn't true. "I need them to be happy" can be challenged by remembering times you were happy before you met them. "They're my soulmate" assumes that there's only one person in the world compatible with you, which defies basic probability. The fourth step is memory reprocessing. Your brain has selectively remembered the best parts of this person and the relationship while downplaying or forgetting the problems, incompatibilities and negative experiences. This is called the rosy retrospection bias, and it keeps you attached to an idealized version that never fully existed. Memory reprocessing involves deliberately recalling the full reality of the relationship. Write down not just the beautiful moments, but also the times you felt confused, hurt, uncertain, or frustrated. Remember the red flags you ignored, the needs that weren't met, the incompatibilities you minimized. This isn't about demonizing them or the relationship. It's about achieving memory balance so you're not attached to a fantasy. The fifth step is future reconstruction. You need to actively imagine and plan a life that doesn't include them. This might feel impossible right now, but it's essential for detachment. Your brain needs to know that there are positive possibilities ahead, or it will cling to the familiar attachment even if it's painful. Future reconstruction means setting goals that have nothing to do with them. Plan trips you want to take, skills you want to develop, experiences you want to have, relationships you want to build. Write down specific details about the life you want to create. Make vision boards. Create timelines. Take concrete steps toward these goals. The more real and compelling your independent future becomes, the easier it is to detach from a future that includes them. The sixth step involves what attachment theorists call internalization of security. Throughout your attachment to this person, you've been seeking security, validation, and worth through them. Detachment requires learning to provide these things for yourself internally rather than seeking them externally from others. This means developing a practice of self-validation where you acknowledge your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences without needing them confirmed by someone else. It means building security through your own achievements, relationships, and self-care rather than through romantic attachment. It means finding worth in your inherent value as a human being rather than in being chosen by a particular person. The seventh step is energetic withdrawal, which involves consciously redirecting the mental and emotional energy you've been sending toward this person back toward your own life. Every time you think about them, worry about them, hope for them, or send them mental messages, you're sending your energy in their direction. Detachment requires pulling that energy back and investing it in yourself. This might involve visualization exercises where you imagine golden threads connecting you to them and consciously cutting those threads. It might involve meditation practices where you breathe in energy and strength and breathe out attachment and longing. It might involve physical rituals like writing letters you don't send and then burning them, or removing items that remind you of them from your living space. The eighth step is social detachment, which means changing how you talk and think about this person in social contexts. Stop telling the story of your attachment to friends and family. Stop asking mutual friends about them. Stop positioning yourself to accidentally run into them. Stop checking their social media or keeping track of their activities. Each of these behaviors reinforces your attachment and prevents detachment. The final step in the detachment process is practice. Detachment isn't something you achieve once and then you're done. It's a practice that you return to again and again as attachment feelings arise. Some days you'll feel completely detached. Other days the attachment will feel as strong as ever. This is normal. Progress isn't linear. But if you continue practicing these steps, the periods of detachment will become longer and the periods of attachment will become shorter and less intense. Detachment is complete when you can think about this person with the same emotional neutrality you feel when thinking about an old friend you haven't seen in years. You can wish them well without needing to know how they're doing. You can remember good times without wanting to recreate them. You can acknowledge that you cared about them without that caring destabilizing your present moment peace. Chapter 8. Rewiring your neural pathways. The science of emotional freedom. Your brain has created superhighways of neural connections that automatically link thousands of triggers to thoughts about this person. Every time you smell their cologne, hear a song that reminds you of them, or even just feel a certain emotion, your brain instantly activates the neural network associated with them. Breaking free requires understanding exactly how to weaken these automatic connections and build new neural pathways that lead to freedom instead of obsession. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections throughout life. This means that the neural pathways keeping you trapped aren't permanent fixtures. They're more like hiking trails that have become well-worn through repeated use. The good news is that trails can be abandoned and new ones can be created. But it requires deliberate, consistent effort over time. The neural pathway between triggers and thoughts about this person exists because it's been strengthened through repetition and emotional intensity. Every time you encountered a trigger and then spent time thinking about them, you walked down that neural pathway and made it stronger. Every time you felt intense emotion while thinking about them, you added what neuroscientists call myelin to the pathway, making it faster and more automatic. Breaking these pathways requires what psychologists call deliberate practice of new responses. This means consciously choosing a different mental or behavioral response every time you encounter a trigger, even when your brain automatically wants to default to thoughts about them. The key is consistency. Missing one or two opportunities to practice new responses won't ruin your progress, but you need to succeed at redirecting your response more often than you fail. The competing pathways strategy involves building new neural connections that compete with the old ones for activation instead of trying to eliminate thoughts about this person. You create stronger associations between triggers and new responses. For example, if hearing a particular song used to make you think about them for hours, you can deliberately listen to that song while doing something physically demanding that requires your full attention. Over time, your brain will associate the song with the new activity instead of with thoughts about them. Attention training is a specific practice that strengthens your ability to consciously direct your attention rather than having it hijacked by automatic patterns. This involves meditation practices, but not the kind where you try to empty your mind. Instead, you practice noticing when your attention has been captured by thoughts about them and gently redirecting it to something else over and over again. This builds what psychologists call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift your mental focus when you choose to. The pattern interrupt technique works by disrupting the automatic sequence that leads from trigger to obsessive thinking. When you notice a trigger that would normally lead to thoughts about them, you immediately do something completely different that requires physical movement and mental engagement. This could be doing jumping jacks, reciting the alphabet backwards, calling a friend, or starting a complex task. The key is speed. You have to interrupt the pattern before it gains momentum. Systematic desensitization involves gradually exposing yourself to triggers in a controlled way while maintaining a calm, detached state. Start with triggers that produce mild reactions and practice staying emotionally neutral while exposed to them. As you build tolerance, gradually work up to stronger triggers. This process teaches your nervous system that these triggers don't represent actual danger and don't require an emotional response. The memory reconsolidation process happens every time you recall a memory. When you remember something, your brain briefly makes that memory unstable and open to modification before storing it again. This creates opportunities to change how memories are stored. Instead of recalling memories about them while feeling intense emotion, practice recalling the same memories while in a calm, detached state over time. This changes how your brain categorizes and responds to these memories. Cognitive load training involves deliberately overloading your working memory when intrusive thoughts appear. Working memory is your brain's temporary workspace and it has limited capacity. When obsessive thoughts arise, immediately engage in a mental task that uses all available working memory. Count backwards from 100 by 7s. Name all the countries you can think of that start with S or visualize yourself rearranging the furniture in your room in detail. This leaves no mental space for rumination. The replacement visualization technique involves creating a detailed positive mental scene that you can immediately access when triggers arise. This scene should be completely unrelated to them and should generate feelings of peace, excitement, or motivation. Practice visualizing this scene in vivid detail during calm moments so it becomes easily accessible during triggering moments. When a trigger arises, immediately shift to this visualization instead of allowing thoughts about them. Embodied practices help rewire neural pathways because they engage both mind and body simultaneously. This might involve dancing, martial arts, playing music, or any activity that requires coordination between physical movement and mental focus. These practices create new neural pathways that are accessible when you need to redirect attention away from obsessive thoughts. The Keystone Habit approach focuses on changing one specific habit that has a cascade effect on other behaviors. For many people, checking social media first thing in the morning leads to hours of rumination about their person. By changing this single habit, perhaps by leaving your phone in another room overnight and doing morning exercise instead, you can disrupt the entire pattern that leads to obsessive thinking throughout the day. Emotional regulation training involves practicing specific techniques for managing emotional intensity when it arises. This includes breathing exercises that activate the parasympathetic nervous system, progressive muscle relaxation that releases physical tension, and grounding techniques that anchor your attention in the present moment rather than in memories or fantasies. Environmental cueing involves strategically placing objects, images, or reminders in your environment that automatically trigger new behaviors. This might mean putting a book next to your bed instead of your phone, placing workout clothes where you can see them, or hanging a picture that reminds you of your goals where you'll see it frequently. These environmental cues help establish new behavioral patterns without requiring willpower. The spaced repetition principle means that practicing these new responses consistently over time is more effective than practicing them intensively for a short period. It's better to practice interrupting obsessive thoughts for 10 minutes every day for a month than to practice for hours one day and then not practice again for weeks. Consistency is more important than intensity when it comes to neural rewiring. Understanding that neural change takes time helps maintain motivation when progress feels slow. Most significant neural pathway changes occur over months, not days or weeks. The old pathways connecting triggers to thoughts about them won't disappear immediately, but they will weaken with consistent practice. While the new pathways you're building become stronger and more automatic. The goal isn't to never think about this person again. The goal is to transform automatic compulsive thinking into conscious voluntary thinking. Success looks like being able to encounter triggers without automatically spiraling into hours of rumination. Being able to think about them when you choose to without becoming emotionally destabilized, and having your attention available for the present moment and your actual life instead of being constantly pulled into the past or fantasy futures. Chapter 9. Rebuilding your individual identity. Becoming whole again. The process of letting go isn't just about releasing attachment to another person. It's about excavating and rebuilding the individual identity that got buried under layers of romantic obsession and codependent thinking. Right now, you probably can't remember who you were before them, what you wanted before them, or what made you happy before them. This chapter is about becoming a complete person again. Identity reconstruction begins with what psychologists call archaeological work, digging through the layers of who you became in relation to them to rediscover who you actually are underneath. This person you're obsessing over isn't the first influence on your identity. Your authentic self existed before them, got covered up during the relationship, and still exists now, waiting to be rediscovered and strengthened. The first step is conducting what therapists call a pre-relationship inventory. Write down everything you can remember about yourself before you met them. What did you do for fun? What were your goals? What kind of music did you listen to? What did you wear? How did you spend your free time? What made you laugh? What were you excited about? Who were your friends? What did you value? What were you proud of? Most people discover that they change dramatically during their attachment to this person, often in ways they didn't consciously choose. You might have started listening to their music, adopted their opinions, changed your appearance to be more attractive to them, or abandoned interests they didn't share. This isn't necessarily bad. We all influence each other. But when identity changes are driven by the desperate need to maintain someone's interest, they disconnect you from your authentic self. The values clarification process involves identifying what actually matters to you when you strip away everything you think you should want or everything you change to please them. Values are different from goals. Goals are things you want to achieve. Values are principles that guide how you want to live. Common values include freedom, creativity, security, adventure, connection, growth, contribution, and authenticity. When you're clear on your values, decisions become easier because you can evaluate choices based on whether they align with what actually matters to you. Reconnecting with abandoned interests is crucial for identity rebuilding. Make a list of everything you used to enjoy or were curious about before this relationship consumed your attention. This might include hobbies, sports, creative pursuits, learning goals, travel destinations, or social activities. Pick one item from this list and commit to engaging with it for at least 1 hour this week, regardless of whether you still feel interested in it. Often the motivation returns once you start taking action. The friend audit involves evaluating your current relationships and identifying which friendships got neglected during your obsessive attachment period. Healthy relationships are essential for identity development because other people reflect back aspects of yourself that you might not see clearly. Reach out to friends you've lost touch with. Apologize for being absent. Invest time and energy in rebuilding these connections. You'll probably discover that being around people who knew you before this relationship helps you remember who you are. Setting new goals that have nothing to do with romantic relationships helps establish an independent sense of direction and purpose. These goals should be challenging enough to require growth but achievable enough to build confidence. They might involve career advancement, creative projects, physical challenges, learning new skills, or contributing to causes you care about. The key is choosing goals that excite you personally, not goals you think would impress others. Developing new routines and rituals create structure for your emerging identity. During your attachment period, many of your routines probably revolved around them, checking if they had texted, hoping to run into them, organizing your schedule around their availability. Now, you need to create routines that center your own well-being and goals. This might include morning rituals that start your day with intention, evening routines that help you reflect and unwind, or weekly activities that you do just for yourself. The solo experience challenge involves deliberately doing things alone that you would normally want to share with someone else. Go to movies alone, eat at restaurants alone, take trips alone, attend events alone. This isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about developing comfort and confidence in your own company. Many people avoid being alone because it forces them to confront thoughts and feelings they've been avoiding. But learning to enjoy your own company is essential for healthy relationships with others. Physical identity reclamation might involve changing aspects of your appearance that were influenced by their preferences or by your attempts to attract them. This could mean getting a new haircut, changing your style, losing or gaining weight for your own health and happiness rather than to be attractive to someone else, or simply wearing clothes that you genuinely like, rather than clothes you think others would find appealing. The opinion development process involves consciously forming your own views on topics you've never really thought about independently. This might include political views, preferences in art or entertainment, lifestyle choices, or philosophical questions. The goal isn't to have the right opinions, but to have opinions that are actually yours rather than borrowed from others or chosen to fit in. Boundary setting practice is crucial for maintaining individual identity in all future relationships. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that help you maintain your sense of self while still connecting with others. Practice saying no to requests that don't align with your values or goals. Practice expressing disagreement respectfully when you have different opinions. Practice maintaining your own interests even when others don't share them. The competency building phase involves deliberately developing skills and abilities that give you confidence and independence. This might mean learning practical skills like cooking, car maintenance, or financial management. It might mean developing professional skills that advance your career. It might mean building creative or athletic abilities that bring you joy and satisfaction. The key is choosing skills that make you feel capable and self-reliant. Social identity expansion involves building connections with new groups of people who know you only as the person you are now, not as half of a couple or as someone pining after another person. Join clubs, take classes, volunteer for causes you care about, or participate in activities where you can meet people who share your interests. These new social connections help solidify your emerging individual identity. The decision-making independence practice involves making choices large and small based solely on your own preferences and values. Start with small decisions like what to eat for lunch or what movie to watch, and practice making these choices without considering what anyone else would prefer. Gradually work up to larger decisions like career moves or living situations. The goal is to rebuild trust in your own judgment and preferences. Creating new traditions and celebrations that belong only to you helps establish a sense of personal continuity and meaning. This might involve celebrating personal achievements, marking meaningful dates that don't relate to any relationship, or creating annual traditions like solo birthday trips or seasonal rituals that reflect your values and interests. Remember that identity development is an ongoing process, not a destination. The goal isn't to become a fixed, unchanging person, but to become someone who can adapt and grow while maintaining a strong sense of self. You want to be someone who can enter into relationships without losing yourself, who can be influenced by others without being controlled by them, and who can love deeply without needing that love to complete you. Chapter 10. Emotional Regulation Mastery. Managing your inner state without them. The deepest level of letting go involves learning to regulate your own emotional state without depending on another person for stability, validation, or comfort. Right now, their presence calms you, their attention elevates you, and their absence destabilizes you. This emotional dependence is the core of your attachment, and breaking it requires developing what psychologists call emotional self-regulation. The ability to manage your inner state regardless of external circumstances. Understanding the difference between emotions and emotional states is the foundation of emotional regulation. Emotions are temporary reactions to specific triggers. You feel sad when you remember something beautiful you've lost, angry when you think about how you were treated, or hopeful when you imagine they might return. Emotional states are the underlying patterns that determine which emotions arise and how intensely you experience them right now. Your baseline emotional state is probably characterized by anxiety, longing, and emotional instability. This state makes you more likely to interpret neutral events as threatening, more likely to experience intense emotional reactions to small triggers, and more likely to seek external sources of comfort and validation. Emotional regulation involves changing this baseline state from reactivity to stability. The nervous system foundation explains why emotional regulation feels so difficult right now. Your autonomic nervous system has three basic states: sympathetic activation, fight or flight; parasympathetic activation, rest and digest; and dorsal vagal shutdown, collapse and disconnection. Attachment, trauma, and obsessive longing keep your nervous system stuck in sympathetic activation. Which means you're constantly in a state of emergency, even when there's no actual threat. Shifting from sympathetic dominance to parasympathetic dominance requires specific practices that signal safety to your nervous system. Deep breathing exercises that emphasize long exhales activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Progressive muscle relaxation teaches your body how to release chronic tension. Cold exposure through cold showers or ice baths can reset nervous system patterns. Regular exercise helps discharge excess activation and restore balance. The emotional granularity practice involves developing a more sophisticated vocabulary for your internal experiences instead of just feeling bad or sad. Learn to identify specific emotions: grief, disappointment, anxiety, shame, anger, loneliness, fear, or overwhelm. Each emotion carries different information and requires different responses. You can't regulate emotions you can't accurately identify. Cognitive reappraisal is a technique that involves changing how you interpret situations to change how you feel about them. Instead of interpreting their lack of contact as evidence that you're unlovable, you can reinterpret it as evidence that you're incompatible or that they're not capable of the kind of relationship you want. The facts don't change, but your emotional response to them can shift dramatically based on how you frame them. The container visualization technique helps manage overwhelming emotions without being consumed by them. When intense feelings arise, imagine placing them in a strong container, a box, a vault, or a safe place. You're not denying or suppressing the emotions. You're containing them so they don't flood your entire system. You can tell yourself, "This feeling is real and valid, but I don't need to be overwhelmed by it right now. I'm putting it in a safe place where I can return to it when I'm ready." Emotional surfing involves riding emotional waves instead of fighting them or being overwhelmed by them. Emotions, even intense ones, have natural rhythms. They arise, peak, and then naturally subside if you don't interfere with the process. When you feel a strong emotion, instead of trying to make it stop or feeding it with more thoughts, practice observing it with curiosity. Notice how it feels in your body, how it changes over time, and how it eventually passes. The opposite action technique comes from dialectical behavior therapy and involves acting opposite to what your emotions urge you to do when those urges aren't helpful. If you feel sad and want to isolate, practice connecting with others. If you feel angry and want to lash out, practice being gentle. If you feel desperate and want to contact them, practice engaging in self-care activities instead. This breaks the cycle of emotions leading to actions that reinforce problematic emotional patterns. Building distress tolerance means developing the ability to sit with difficult emotions without immediately seeking relief through unhealthy behaviors. This might involve practices like holding ice cubes while feeling intense emotions, taking hot showers while allowing yourself to cry, or doing intense exercise while processing difficult feelings. The goal is to prove to yourself that you can survive emotional intensity without needing external rescue. The self-soothing toolkit should include specific strategies for each of your senses. Visual soothing might involve looking at beautiful images or calming colors. Auditory soothing could include specific music, nature sounds, or guided meditations. Tactile soothing might involve soft textures, warm baths, or comforting objects. Taste and smell soothing could include herbal tea, essential oils, or comforting foods. Having predetermined strategies makes it easier to implement them when you're emotionally dysregulated. Mindfulness meditation isn't about emptying your mind or feeling peaceful all the time. It's about developing the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being controlled by them. Start with just 5 minutes a day of sitting quietly and noticing what arises in your awareness. Thoughts, emotions, physical sensations without trying to change anything. This practice builds what psychologists call metacognitive awareness. The ability to think about thinking and feel about feeling. The emotional check-in practice involves regularly assessing your emotional state throughout the day so you can intervene before small emotional reactions become overwhelming. Set reminders on your phone to pause and ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? What do I need? What would be most helpful for me in this moment? This prevents emotional buildup and helps you respond to your needs before reaching crisis points. Creating emotional safety in your environment involves organizing your living space, relationships, and daily routines to support emotional regulation rather than trigger dysregulation. This might mean removing reminders of them from your bedroom, establishing phone-free zones during certain hours, surrounding yourself with supportive people, or creating calm spaces where you can retreat when feeling overwhelmed. The repairing process involves learning to give yourself the emotional support you may have never received or learned to provide for yourself. This means speaking to yourself with kindness during difficult moments, celebrating your achievements, comforting yourself when you're scared, and setting loving boundaries to protect your well-being. You become both the loving parent and the cared-for child in your own inner world. Understanding that emotional regulation is a skill that improves with practice helps maintain motivation when progress feels slow, like learning to play an instrument or speak a new language. Emotional regulation requires consistent practice over time. You'll have good days and bad days, but if you continue practicing these techniques, your overall emotional stability will improve dramatically. The goal of emotional regulation isn't to feel happy all the time or to never think about them again. The goal is to develop emotional resilience and independence so that your inner state isn't controlled by whether they text you back, what they post on social media, or whether they want to be with you. You want to become someone whose emotional well-being is based on your relationship with yourself, not on your relationship with anyone else. Chapter 11. Advanced Detachment Techniques. Handling Setbacks and Breakthrough Moments. The path to emotional freedom isn't linear. You'll have days where you feel completely detached and free, followed by days where the obsession feels as intense as ever. You'll make significant progress, then encounter a trigger that sends you spiraling back into rumination. This isn't failure. This is the normal process of deep psychological change. And understanding how to navigate setbacks is crucial for long-term success. The wave pattern of emotional healing means that progress happens in cycles, not straight lines. Imagine your healing as an ocean wave that moves forward toward the shore, then pulls back, then moves forward again. Each time reaching a little further than before. The pullback isn't regression, it's the natural rhythm of integration. Your psyche needs time to process and integrate each level of healing before moving to the next. Setback triggers often come when you least expect them. You might encounter an unexpected reminder, hear news about them through mutual friends, or simply have a moment of vulnerability when your defenses are down. The key to handling these moments isn't to avoid all possible triggers, which is impossible, but to have a predetermined response plan that you can implement immediately. The emergency protocol for acute attachment episodes should be memorized and practiced before you need it. When you feel yourself spiraling into obsessive thoughts or overwhelming emotions, immediately implement this sequence. First, name what's happening out loud. I'm having an attachment episode. This is temporary. Second, change your physical state through movement, cold water on your face or deep breathing. Third, reach out to a trusted friend or support person. Fourth, engage in a predetermined activity that requires your full attention. The 24-hour rule prevents impulsive decisions during emotional intensity. When you're feeling desperate to contact them, make dramatic life changes, or engage in behaviors you'll regret later. Commit to waiting 24 hours before taking any action. Most intense emotional states naturally subside within this time frame, and you'll often find that the urgent need to act was driven by temporary emotional flooding rather than genuine necessity. Relapse prevention involves identifying your personal warning signs that indicate you're moving toward attachment thinking. These might include checking their social media, driving by their workplace, asking mutual friends about them, or engaging in fantasy conversations. Create a list of these warning behaviors and ask trusted friends to point them out if they notice you engaging in them. The exposure therapy approach involves gradually exposing yourself to reminders of them while maintaining emotional equilibrium. Start with triggers that produce mild reactions and practice staying calm while exposed to them. This might mean looking at a photo of them for 30 seconds while practicing deep breathing or listening to a song that reminds you of them while doing something else that makes you feel strong and confident. Advanced cognitive restructuring goes beyond challenging obvious irrational thoughts to addressing deeper core beliefs that fuel attachment. These beliefs might include I'm not complete without a romantic partner. If someone leaves me, it means I'm not worthy of love or I need to be needed to have value. These beliefs are often formed in childhood and require deeper work to address and change. The spiritual detachment practice involves releasing not just your attachment to them, but your attachment to specific outcomes in general. This means accepting that you can't control whether they come back, whether they think about you, or whether they realize what they've lost. You release your grip on trying to make things happen and instead trust that whatever is meant to unfold will unfold. Energy management becomes crucial during the advanced stages of letting go. You'll notice that thinking about them drains your energy while engaging with your actual life restores it. Start paying attention to what gives you energy versus what depletes you. And make decisions based on energy rather than emotion. If thinking about them consistently leaves you feeling exhausted, that's information about what serves your highest good. The plateau phase often occurs after significant initial progress. You'll feel like you've stopped improving, like you're stuck at a certain level of attachment, like the remaining feelings will never fully resolve. This plateau isn't permanent. It's your psyche integrating the changes you've already made. Continue practicing your detachment techniques during this phase, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Breakthrough moments often come unexpectedly and can feel disorienting. You might suddenly realize you haven't thought about them for several days. Or you might think about them and feel emotionally neutral for the first time. These breakthroughs can actually create anxiety because they mean letting go of the familiar pain that has defined your identity for so long. Allow these moments without trying to analyze or understand them too much. The witness consciousness technique involves developing the part of you that can observe your attachment feelings without being consumed by them when obsessive thoughts arise. Instead of fighting them or engaging with them, practice watching them from a place of detached curiosity. You might think, interesting. I'm having thoughts about them right now. I wonder what triggered this. I notice these thoughts create sadness in my chest. This witnessing creates space between you and your thoughts. Seasonal and cyclical patterns often emerge in the letting go process. You might notice that certain times of year, certain days of the week, or certain times of day are more difficult than others. Instead of being surprised by these patterns, plan for them. If Sundays are particularly difficult, create meaningful Sunday rituals. If the anniversary of when you met approaches, plan something special for yourself during that time. The integration challenge involves incorporating the lessons from this attachment experience into your understanding of yourself and relationships without becoming cynical or closed off. What did this experience teach you about your needs, your patterns, your values, and your boundaries? How can you use this knowledge to create healthier relationships in the future? Advanced self-compassion practices become essential when dealing with setbacks. Instead of judging yourself for having difficult days or experiencing attachment feelings, practice treating yourself with the same kindness you would show a good friend going through a difficult time. Remember that letting go of someone you care deeply about is one of the most challenging psychological tasks a human being can undertake. The commitment renewal process involves regularly recommitting to your healing and growth, especially during difficult periods. This isn't about forcing yourself to feel differently, but about recommitting to the practices and choices that support your freedom and well-being. Some days you'll need to renew this commitment multiple times. Understanding that complete detachment may take months or even years helps maintain realistic expectations. This isn't about being weak or doing something wrong. It's about respecting the depth of human attachment and the time required for genuine psychological change. Progress is measured not just by how often you think about them, but by how those thoughts affect you when they arise. The ultimate goal of advanced detachment work isn't to never think about them again, but to transform your relationship with those thoughts and feelings. Success looks like being able to remember them with gratitude for what you learned. Thinking about them without emotional charge and wishing them well without needing to know how they're doing. Chapter 12. Building New Relationships. How to love without losing yourself after experiencing obsessive attachment. The idea of opening your heart to someone new can feel terrifying. You're afraid of falling into the same patterns, losing yourself again, are being hurt even more deeply. But isolation isn't the answer. Learning to love in a healthy, balanced way is the ultimate demonstration that you've truly healed from your attachment patterns. The secure attachment foundation must be built within yourself before you can create it with another person. Secure attachment means feeling fundamentally safe in relationships, trusting that you can handle whatever happens and maintaining your sense of self even when deeply connected to someone else. This security comes from your relationship with yourself, not from finding the right person. Attachment style awareness helps you understand your default patterns in relationships. If you experienced obsessive attachment, you likely have an anxious attachment style, which means you tend to seek excessive reassurance, fear abandonment, and have difficulty trusting that others will be consistently available. Understanding this pattern allows you to recognize it when it arises and make conscious choices rather than automatic reactions. The independence before interdependence principle means establishing a strong individual identity and emotional regulation skills before seeking serious romantic connection. You should be able to soothe yourself when distressed, enjoy your own company, pursue your own goals, and maintain your own friendships. When you can meet your own needs, you're free to choose relationships from desire rather than desperation. Red flag recognition becomes crucial for avoiding partners who might trigger your attachment patterns. Be especially wary of people who are emotionally unavailable, inconsistent in their communication, have unresolved trauma they're not addressing, show signs of addiction or mental health issues they're not managing, or seem to enjoy creating drama and uncertainty. These patterns often feel familiar and exciting to people with anxious attachment, but they're recipes for another obsessive attachment cycle. Green flag identification helps you recognize healthy relationship potential. Look for people who communicate directly and honestly, are consistent in their words and actions, have their own interests and friendships, can discuss difficult topics without becoming defensive, show genuine interest in your thoughts and feelings, and demonstrate emotional regulation skills. These qualities might feel boring at first compared to the intensity you're used to, but they're the foundation of lasting happiness. The pacing strategy involves taking relationships slowly enough to make conscious decisions rather than being swept away by emotion or chemistry. This means limiting contact in the early stages, maintaining your own activities and friendships, and taking time to evaluate compatibility before becoming physically or emotionally intimate. Fast-moving relationships often bypass the rational evaluation period and lead straight to intense attachment. Maintaining individual identity within relationships requires conscious effort and clear boundaries. Continue pursuing your own interests even when you want to spend all your time together. Maintain your own friendships even if they prefer different people. Keep your own living space for as long as practical. Make decisions about your career, finances, and lifestyle based on your own values rather than just what works for the relationship. The communication foundation involves developing skills for expressing your needs, concerns, and feelings directly rather than hoping the other person will figure them out. Practice using I statements instead of you statements. Learn to ask for what you need without making demands. Develop the ability to discuss problems without attacking or withdrawing. These skills prevent the buildup of resentment and misunderstandings that fuel attachment anxiety. Emotional regulation within relationships means managing your own emotional state rather than expecting your partner to do it for you. When you feel anxious about the relationship, use your self-soothing skills rather than seeking excessive reassurance. When you feel triggered by something they do or say, take responsibility for your emotional reaction while also communicating your needs clearly. The interdependence balance involves being close enough to feel connected but separate enough to maintain your individual identity. Healthy relationships involve mutual support and shared experiences while preserving each person's autonomy and individual growth. You want to enhance each other's lives rather than complete each other or fill gaps in each other's identity. Trust building happens gradually through consistent positive experiences rather than through dramatic gestures or intense conversations. Notice when they do what they say they'll do. When they're honest about difficult topics, when they respect your boundaries, and when they support your individual growth. These small, consistent actions build genuine security over time. Conflict navigation skills prevent small disagreements from becoming relationship-threatening events. Learn to fight fair by focusing on specific behaviors rather than character attacks. Taking breaks when emotions become too intense and working towards solutions rather than just expressing feelings. Healthy relationships involve conflict. The difference is how it's handled. The fantasy versus reality check involves regularly evaluating your partner based on who they actually are rather than who you hope they'll become or who you imagine they could be with the right support. Pay attention to their actual behavior patterns, their follow-through on commitments, and how they treat you consistently, not just in their best moments. Breaking codependent patterns requires maintaining your own goals, friendships, and identity even when you feel pulled to merge completely with your partner. Codependency often feels like love, but it's actually mutual dependency that weakens both people. Healthy love enhances individual growth rather than replacing it. The vulnerability timing involves sharing deeper parts of yourself gradually as trust and safety are established rather than too much too soon in an attempt to create instant intimacy. Premature vulnerability can create artificial closeness that doesn't have a strong foundation and often leads to later disappointment. Sexual pacing allows emotional and intellectual compatibility to be established before physical intimacy. Creates attachment hormones that can cloud judgment about long-term compatibility. While physical chemistry is important, it shouldn't be the primary foundation of a relationship decision. The support system maintenance means continuing to invest in friendships and family relationships even when you're in a happy romantic relationship. These relationships provide perspective, support, and identity stability that protect you from losing yourself in romantic attachment. Future planning discussions should happen gradually and should involve both people's individual goals as well as shared dreams. Be wary of partners who either avoid any discussion of the future or want to plan your entire life together immediately. Healthy future planning involves exploring compatibility while respecting each person's individual development. Remembering that you survived the loss of your previous attachment and can survive anything that happens in future relationships gives you the confidence to love fully without the desperate clinging that characterizes obsessive attachment. You know you can handle heartbreak, which paradoxically makes you more attractive and more capable of genuine intimacy. Chapter 13. Creating a life they can't compete with. The ultimate victory over obsessive attachment isn't just letting go of them. It's building a life so fulfilling, meaningful, and aligned with your authentic self that no relationship loss could ever devastate you again. This chapter is about creating what psychologists call intrinsic worth. A life that generates happiness, meaning and satisfaction from within rather than depending on external validation or romantic partnership. The life audit process involves honestly evaluating every area of your current existence to identify what's working, what's missing, and what needs to change. Rate each area of your life on a scale of 1 to 10. Career satisfaction, physical health, mental health, social relationships, financial security, creative expression, personal growth, spiritual connection, and contribution to others. This audit reveals where you've been neglecting your own life while obsessing about someone else. Vision creation goes beyond setting goals to imagining the person you want to become and the life you want to live in vivid detail. If you could design your ideal life without any limitations, what would it look like? Where would you live? What kind of work would you do? How would you spend your time? Who would be in your life? What would you be proud of? What legacy would you leave? This vision becomes your North Star for all future decisions. The energy investment principle means putting your time, attention, and emotional energy into areas that compound and grow rather than into areas that drain and deplete you. Obsessing about someone is pure energy drain with no return on investment. Building skills, relationships, health, and meaningful work provides exponential returns that create an upward spiral of growth and satisfaction. Career acceleration often happens naturally when you stop directing mental energy towards someone who doesn't want you and start directing it toward your professional development. Whether this means pursuing additional education, building new skills, starting a business, changing careers entirely, or simply performing better in your current role. Career growth provides identity, purpose, and independence that make romantic attachment less crucial for self-worth. Physical transformation serves multiple purposes. It improves your health and energy, boosts your confidence, provides concrete evidence of your ability to change, and often makes you more attractive to potential partners. This isn't about becoming someone else to get attention. It's about becoming the healthiest version of yourself because you value your own well-being. Social network expansion involves building a rich community of relationships that provide different types of connection, support, and enjoyment. Cultivate friendships with people who share your interests. Mentoring relationships with people you admire. Collaborative relationships with people working towards similar goals and nurturing relationships with people who need your support. Creative expression development gives you an outlet for processing emotions while building something meaningful and lasting. Whether this involves writing, music, visual arts, cooking, gardening, or any other creative pursuit. Having a creative outlet provides intrinsic satisfaction that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval or participation. Financial independence building removes the need to depend on anyone else for security and opens up possibilities for lifestyle choices based on preference rather than necessity. This might involve paying off debt, building savings, developing multiple income streams, or acquiring assets that generate passive income. Financial freedom is emotional freedom. Adventure and experience accumulation creates a rich life story filled with memories, growth, and joy that belong entirely to you. Travel to places you've always wanted to see. Try activities you've been curious about. Challenge yourself with new experiences and say yes to opportunities that excite you. These experiences build confidence and provide perspective that makes relationship problems seem smaller. Skill mastery in areas unrelated to romantic relationships provides a sense of competence and accomplishment that builds genuine self-esteem. Whether this involves learning languages, developing technical skills, mastering sports or physical activities, or becoming expert in subjects you're passionate about. Mastery experiences prove to yourself that you're capable of achieving whatever you set your mind to. Service and contribution activities connect you to something larger than yourself and provide meaning that transcends personal relationships. This might involve volunteering for causes you care about, mentoring others who are facing challenges you've overcome, contributing your skills to community projects, or simply being a positive influence in others' lives. Spiritual development provides a foundation of meaning and connection that's independent of human relationships. This doesn't necessarily involve religion, though it might. It could involve meditation practices, connection with nature, philosophical exploration, or any practice that helps you feel connected to something greater than your individual existence. The compound effect of simultaneously improving multiple areas of your life creates momentum that accelerates your growth exponentially. When you're building your career while also improving your health, while also expanding your social circle, while also developing new skills, each area reinforces and supports the others. Success in one area provides energy and confidence for growth in other areas. Identity integration means becoming someone whose sense of self is derived from multiple sources rather than depending primarily on romantic relationships for identity and worth. When your identity includes being a skilled professional, a loyal friend, a creative person, a healthy person, a generous contributor, and whatever other roles matter to you, losing one relationship can't threaten your entire sense of self. The magnetic effect occurs when you're genuinely happy and fulfilled in your own life. People are naturally drawn to others who radiate contentment and positive energy. Paradoxically, the less you need someone else to complete you, the more attractive you become to potential partners. But this attraction comes from authentic fulfillment rather than desperate need. Legacy building involves creating something that will outlast your lifetime and matter beyond your personal satisfaction. This might involve building a business, raising children, contributing to important causes, creating art, or simply being remembered as someone who made others' lives better. Legacy thinking provides perspective that makes temporary relationship setbacks seem less significant. The abundance mindset shift occurs when you realize that your life is full of opportunities, possibilities, and sources of joy that don't depend on any specific person choosing to be with you. Instead of feeling like you're missing out on the one person who could make you happy, you recognize that happiness comes from engaging fully with the life you're actually living. Creating a life they can't compete with doesn't mean trying to make them jealous or prove something to them. It means building something so meaningful and satisfying that even if they came back and wanted to resume the relationship, you would have to seriously consider whether it would add value to the life you've created. The ultimate goal is reaching a point where you're grateful for the growth their absence forced you to pursue. Chapter 14. When they come back, how to handle contact without losing your progress. One of the most challenging situations in the letting go process is when the person you've been working to detach from suddenly reappears in your life. Whether they reach out directly, you encounter them unexpectedly, or they send mixed signals through mutual friends or social media, their return can trigger all the attachment feelings you've been working to heal. This chapter prepares you for these scenarios and provides strategies for maintaining your progress. The return pattern is more common than people realize. Often, just as you're beginning to heal and move forward, they sense the shift in your energy and become curious about what's changed. This isn't necessarily because they want a genuine relationship. It might be because they've lost their power over you, and that shift threatens their ego or their backup plan of keeping you available. Recognizing the difference between genuine interest and ego validation is crucial when they make contact. Genuine interest involves direct communication about wanting to rebuild the relationship, acknowledgement of past problems, evidence of personal growth or change, and respect for the healing process you've been through. Ego validation involves vague messages that keep you guessing, contact that comes when they need something, communication that doesn't acknowledge the pain they caused, and behavior that suggests they expect things to return to how they were before. The 24-hour response rule should be implemented before responding to any contact from them. Their message probably triggered intense emotions, hope, confusion, or attachment feelings. Responding while in this activated state often leads to decisions you'll regret later. Take a full day to process your emotions. Consider their message objectively and decide what response, if any, aligns with your healing and your values. Evaluating your current emotional state before engaging helps you determine whether you're strong enough to handle contact without losing your progress. If you're still struggling with obsessive thoughts, emotional regulation, or building your individual identity, any contact with them is likely to destabilize your healing process. There's no shame in not being ready. Protecting your progress is more important than responding to their communication. The intention evaluation process involves honestly examining why they might be reaching out and why you want to respond. Are they contacting you because they genuinely miss you and want to rebuild, or because they're bored, lonely, or facing difficulties in their current situation? Are you wanting to respond because you truly believe reconnection would be healthy? Or because you've been hoping for this moment and don't want to miss the opportunity? Setting clear boundaries before any interaction protects your emotional well-being and signals that you've changed since they last knew you. These boundaries might include limiting communication to specific topics, requiring time between messages before responding, meeting only in public places if you meet at all, and being clear about what behavior you will and won't accept. The progress protection strategy involves continuing all your healing practices even more rigorously when they reappear. Double down on your self-care routines. Maintain regular contact with your support system. Stick to your personal goals and activities and pay extra attention to your emotional regulation practices. Their return is a test of your healing, not a reason to abandon the work you've done. Realistic expectation setting prevents you from getting swept back into fantasy thinking about who they are or what's possible between you. Remember who they actually were in the relationship, not who you hoped they could become. Consider whether they've demonstrated genuine change through their actions, not just their words. Accept that people rarely change dramatically without significant life events or dedicated personal work. The communication framework provides structure for any interaction that does occur. Be direct about your experience and your current boundaries rather than pretending nothing happened. Acknowledge the positive aspects of your history together without minimizing the problems that led to the separation. Focus on present reality rather than past hurt or future possibilities. Keep conversation specific rather than falling into abstract discussions about feelings or relationships. Distinguishing between closure and reopening helps you determine the purpose of any communication. True closure involves acknowledgement of what happened, expression of what you learned, and a sense of completion that allows both people to move forward peacefully. Reopening involves exploring whether a different type of relationship is possible based on who you both are now. Most contact that feels like reopening is actually just renewed attachment activation. The test period approach involves observing their behavior over time rather than making decisions based on initial contact or promises about the future. If they're serious about reconnection, they should be willing to move slowly. Respect your boundaries. Demonstrate consistent behavior and invest time in rebuilding trust. If they're just seeking validation or trying to keep you as an option, this will become clear through their actions. Managing attachment reactivation is crucial when they reappear because contact often triggers all the brain chemistry that created your original obsession. Expect to feel intense emotions, hope, confusion, and possibly a return of obsessive thinking. This doesn't mean you haven't healed. It means you're human. Use all your emotional regulation tools more intensively during this period. The decision matrix helps you evaluate whether any form of renewed relationship would be beneficial. Consider whether they've demonstrated genuine change, whether the original incompatibilities still exist, whether you've grown in ways that make you less compatible, whether reconnection would support or hinder your personal growth, and whether you're choosing from empowerment or from attachment desperation. Protecting your new life means not allowing their return to derail the progress you've made in other areas. Don't abandon the goals you've been working toward, the relationships you've been building, or the identity you've been developing. If someone truly cares about you, they should enhance your life rather than require you to sacrifice other parts of it. The integration challenge involves incorporating any lessons from their return into your continued healing process. Regardless of whether you choose to rebuild a relationship, what did their contact trigger in you? What does your response reveal about your current attachment patterns? How can this experience strengthen your understanding of yourself and your boundaries? Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for both yourself and them is to decline reconnection. If you recognize that contact triggers unhealthy patterns, that you're not compatible for sustainable happiness, or that you've simply grown into someone who wants different things, saying no to their return is an act of wisdom and self-respect. The ultimate test of your healing isn't whether they come back, but whether you can handle their return or their permanent absence with equal emotional stability. True freedom means being genuinely okay either way, not because you don't care, but because your well-being no longer depends on their choices. Chapter 15. The Transformed Life. Who you become after true letting go. The journey of letting go completely transforms who you are as a person. The person reading this conclusion is not the same person who began this process. You've developed emotional strength you didn't know you possessed. Learn to love yourself in ways you never thought possible and discovered that your worth doesn't depend on being chosen by anyone else. This chapter celebrates who you've become and prepares you for the extraordinary life that awaits. The emotional sovereignty you've developed means you no longer need anyone else to regulate your inner state. You can feel sad without being devastated, angry without being destructive, and hopeful without being desperate. Your emotions inform you about your experience, but they don't control your actions or determine your worth. This emotional independence is perhaps the greatest gift you could give yourself. Your relationship with solitude has fundamentally changed. Where you once feared being alone because it forced you to confront painful thoughts and feelings, you now enjoy your own company. Solitude has become a space for reflection, creativity, and peace rather than a void to be filled by someone else's presence. You've learned that being alone and being lonely are completely different experiences. The authentic self you've uncovered is more interesting, capable, and attractive than the person you were trying to be to win someone else's approval. You've stopped contorting yourself to fit what you thought others wanted and started expressing who you actually are. This authenticity creates genuine connections with people who appreciate you for yourself rather than for who you pretend to be. Your definition of love has evolved from desperate attachment to conscious choice. You understand the difference between love and obsession, between caring and clinging, between intimacy and codependency. You're now capable of loving people fully while still maintaining your independence, supporting their growth while pursuing your own, and choosing to be with someone because you want to, not because you need to. The resilience you've built extends far beyond romantic relationships. Having survived the complete dissolution of your sense of self and rebuilt it stronger than before, you know you can handle whatever life brings. Job loss, friendship changes, family difficulties, health challenges. None of these feel as threatening as they once did because you've proven to yourself that you can endure anything and emerge stronger. Your relationship patterns have completely shifted. You no longer attract or are attracted to unavailable people, dramatic situations, or relationships that require you to sacrifice your well-being for connection. Instead, you recognize healthy relationship qualities and have the confidence to require them. You'd rather be alone than in a relationship that diminishes you. The inner security you've developed makes you naturally more attractive to others. But paradoxically, you need their attraction less. This creates a positive cycle where your lack of desperation makes you more appealing, which gives you more options, which reduces desperation even further. You interact with potential partners from a position of choice rather than need. Your life purpose has expanded beyond finding romantic love to creating meaningful contribution in the world. Whether through your career, creative expression, service to others, or simply being a positive influence in people's lives, you found sources of meaning that transcend personal relationships. This broader purpose provides stability that no relationship loss can threaten. The gratitude you feel for your difficult experience surprises you. While you wouldn't choose to go through that pain again, you recognize that it forced you to develop qualities and strengths that might have remained dormant otherwise. The person you've become through healing is someone you genuinely like and respect, someone you might never have discovered without that catalyst. Your relationship with uncertainty has transformed from anxiety-provoking to exciting. Not knowing what's coming next used to terrify you because you felt so dependent on external circumstances for your well-being. Now uncertainty represents possibilities and adventures. You trust yourself to handle whatever comes and to create meaning and happiness regardless of external circumstances. The emotional freedom you've achieved means you can engage with all your feelings without being controlled by them. You can feel sad without becoming depressed, angry without becoming bitter, nostalgic without becoming attached to the past, hopeful without becoming dependent on specific outcomes. Your emotions flow through you rather than defining you. Your decision-making process has become clear and confident. Instead of making choices based on fear, other people's expectations, or desperate attempts to control outcomes, you make decisions based on your values, your authentic desires, and your commitment to your own growth and well-being. This clarity makes life much simpler and more satisfying. The example you now provide to others is profound. People notice your transformation, your confidence, your peace, your authenticity, your emotional stability without trying to teach anyone. You demonstrate that it's possible to survive devastating heartbreak and emerge stronger, happier, and more complete. Your healing inspires others to believe in their own capacity for transformation. Your relationship with your past has shifted from regret and rumination to acceptance and learning. You can think about previous relationships, including the one you had to let go of appreciation for what they taught you and what they brought to your life without wishing they had been different or hoping they might resume. The future you're creating is based on your own vision rather than on finding someone to complete you. You have goals, dreams, and plans that excite you independent of any romantic relationship. While you remain open to love, your happiness doesn't depend on it materializing. This makes you both more attractive as a partner and less likely to settle for relationships that don't truly enhance your life. The most profound transformation is that you've learned to be the source of your own validation, security, and love. You no longer need someone else to make you feel worthy, valuable, or complete because you provide these things for yourself. This doesn't make you selfish or closed off. It makes you capable of genuine intimacy because you're connecting from wholeness rather than from neediness. Looking back, you realize that the person you were obsessively attached to wasn't actually the love of your life. The love of your life is the relationship you've built with yourself. Every other relationship you have going forward will be an addition to this foundation rather than a replacement for it. This is true love, the kind that can never be taken away from you because it exists within you. The journey of letting go has revealed that you are already whole, already enough, already worthy of love exactly as you are. You don't need to be chosen by any particular person to validate your worth. You don't need to be in a relationship to be complete. You don't need external circumstances to be perfect to experience deep happiness and fulfillment. This is your new beginning. The pain that brought you to this process was the gateway to becoming the person you were always meant to be. You are free. You are whole. You are ready for whatever beautiful experiences await you. And most importantly, you know that no matter what happens, you will always have the most important relationship of all, the one with yourself.